Alright, so today we're going to be installing this Hammerhead performance motor. I just pulled it out of the box. It looks really nice. It's got a Hammerhead logo on it. Clean looking motor. So on this motor, what you're going to have to really look, you're going to have to look the wiring harness and make sure it's compatible with your wiring harness. It's a pretty basic installation. You got to wire out of your starter, which this will go directly to your starting solenoid. So when you turn your ignition on, it'll hit the starter. You also got a plug that goes right into your ignition box with a green, a white, and a yellow wire. It's a pretty basic plug. You just got to make sure your connections are the same. Then you got two other wires, the black and red one and a blue and white one. And that's pretty much for the wiring. Alright man, so let's get this thing started. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to need a Phillips screwdriver and 2 screws on this ignition cover. You don't want to unhook all your wiring. Well, this will just pull off. And then you unplug your plug, the ones I talked about earlier. And then also there's a electric choke wire off your carburetor you're going to want to pull off. That's the chickens I was talking about. Alright, and there's a wire that goes on the starter solenoid, the one I talked about earlier. But first, one thing I forgot to mention, before you start on it, disconnect your battery. Alright, now we're going to start out on the carburetor. So the wiring loom's all disconnected. So you're going to want to unhook your air filter box. I don't know what you got. If you got the stock one, there's a couple screws on it. This one only had a uni air filter on it, so it's just one screw right here. I already took it off. And then you take your Phillips, undo the hose clamp, pull out your filter, put all your parts in a good spot. Okay, and then you're going to want to unhook the throttle cable. And this will take a 12 millimeter. You just undo the nuts on there, you'll see them. And then twist the throttle to full throttle and pull off the cable. It'll pop right out. Okay, put that out of your way. Okay, I already had unhooked the choke wire. Okay, take off the gas line. And then with a Phillip on the manifold, there's just a hose clamp with a Phillip. Just take it off. Unscrew it, loosen it up. Then you can pull the carburetor. Pull it out. Be real careful with it. You don't want to break that rubber on the boot. And then you just pull it off like that. And that's it. That's it for that. And I didn't mention that the solenoid, for the starter solenoid, is a 10 millimeter. And that's it for this part. Alright, so now what we're going to do, we're going to remove the exhaust pipe. You're going to need a 13 millimeter for the strap, for the bracket, and 2 10 millimeters on the manifold. Alright, let's see if we can get this thing out. It's a little bit tricky to pull this exhaust pipe out. Kind of just slide it out and bring it out through the bottom. Comes out, set to the side, don't lose your bolts. Put them all in one spot so you don't lose it. Okay. Now that we still have the 10 millimeter on the wrench, we're going to pull off the shifting linkage. It's 2 10 millimeter bolts. And then you just slide the cable out through the bottom, and then just pull it up out of your way, and put it up somewhere where it's not in your way. You can zip tie it up. Then what we're going to need to do with the same 10 millimeter, you're going to want to take off the chain guard. It's 3 10 millimeter bolts. Okay, move that out of the way. Okay, then you're going to need, let's see, we're going to need a 17 millimeter. So take a 17 millimeter and undo this bolt right here. This is your chain tensioner. This is how you tighten your chain, this is how you loosen your chain. So just drop, you don't want to unloosen this all the way. You just want to unloosen it to the very end of the threads until you see the engine cradle will drop and you'll see your chain loosening up. Then what you want to do is just pop off your chain. Around the big sprocket. Sometimes you got to roll the cart to get it off. Pull it out of your way, set it down to the side. Then what we're going to do with that same 17 millimeter, we'll undo both engine cradle bolts. One on each side, one here and one here. Okay, and just leave the bolts in here for now until you find someone to help you lift this cradle out. Then the last 2 bolts are going to be a 6 millimeter Allen wrench. There's one on each side. Loosen them up hand tight. Don't pull them all the way out because this cradle will drop. So I get them loose. And then what I have to do, I'm going to have to find somebody to help me grab this cradle. It's going to take 2 people and move this cradle and pull the whole motor out. So let me look around for somebody to help me. Alright, I found someone to help me pull this motor crate out. This is my son Joe. So what I did is I took out the 2 6 millimeter Allen wrenches here and I pulled this bracket off. And once you pull this bracket off, you can just pull the whole motor out and set it on the ground. Alright man, grab one side. Let's just kind of wiggle it out. Slide out. Alright, got it? We'll set it on the ground so I can work on it. Alright bud, thanks man. Alright, so that's that. We unbolted the old motor, the whole motor's unbolted. You can see how it is. It's a pretty simple setup. You know, you got this motor crate. So now we'll start taking this motor crate out and bolting it and the gears and the shifter and putting it on the new motor and get it back in for you guys. So, alright, so what we did is we took the cradle off the old motor, put it on the new motor, and put it right back in. But there's a couple things I want to show you guys. Okay, there's a motor mount right here, and the bolts right here. So you're going to want to take it off the old motor, but first you got to remove the sprocket, which is 2 5/16 bolts. Take them off, slide your sprocket off. 3 10 millimeter bolts for the motor mount. This motor mount right here. Take it off the old motor, put it on the new one. Put the sprocket back on, and then for your shifting, this is very important. You got to look on your old motor of exactly what splines it was on and put it right on the new motor, and that's for your forward and reverse. If you don't put this on right, it's not going to shift right. So you got to put it, mark it where it was on one motor, which direction, and put it exactly the same. And then mount your cradle on. It's just by this motor mount that you bolt on here. One motor mount in the back. Get out of here, cat. And this motor mount in the front. So that's pretty much it. Cradle goes on. This motor mount, shifter, put back in the car. And pretty much what we're going to do is just reverse the steps that I have already showed you. So let's get to it. Alright, now what we're going to do, we're going to take the 2 shifting cables. One for forward, one for reverse. We're going to put them back in the slots, and then we're going to attach the whole bracket back to the motor case with 2 10 millimeter bolts. Okay, and that's going to be your forward and reverse. Okay, and just make sure everything shifts right. Everything should be smooth. There should be no hiccups. If it doesn't go into forward or reverse, there's little adjustments here with this 10mm bolt. You can adjust it. So if it doesn't shift in perfect, you might have to do a couple adjustments. Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to put our chain back on. Make sure our chain's back on the sprocket. And then what we're going to do on this motor mount, when you tighten this with a 17mm, this pulls the engine up. And that's what tightens your chain. See how loose this is? So what we want to do is put a 17mm and just go slow. And you'll see as I tighten this motor mount, it pulls the whole engine up. And that's what tightens your chain. There's a rubber mount here. It is a motor mount and a chain tensioner all in one. And see, as I tighten this, the chain gets tighter. And this is something you should check regularly. You don't want it too tight or too loose. You want about an inch play in there. If you have it too tight, it'll bust your chain. If you have it too loose, it can come off. And you want to check it after, every 6 rides or so, because these chains do stretch. You want about an inch play. And also it's good to lube these up, get some chain lube and make sure your chain's lubed up. So that looks pretty good right there. About an inch should be fine. It's not going to jump off and it's not going to be so tight it's going to break your chain. Okay, and then we want to go back to the 10mm. We'll put our chain guard back on, and this is just going to be three 10mm bolts. Right back on, just like you took it off. Okay, that's about it for this part. So, alright, we'll get back to doing the carburation and hook up the wiring. So next what we're going to do, we had our carburetor just pushed over to the side so I didn't have to disconnect all the hoses and stuff. So we're going to grab our carburetor and we're going to stick it back in the boot, get all the lines situated. And you want to make sure the carburetor is seated all the way in the boot. You don't want no air leaks. And then just a Phillips screwdriver, tighten up the boot. The motor comes with a hose clamp already on the manifold. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to find the electric choke wire and run it over to your electrical box. And find the plug. It's just a two-prong plug. And hook it up. That'll be your choke. And then the main engine wire loom, you run it in the same place. Run it around. And it'll have the yellow, white, and green wire. Plug that into your main loom. And there's also a black wire that comes out of the coil, and it goes to the blue. And that's your wiring for your motor. And then also from the starter, you have one cable that comes out of the starter. The motor's a complete kit with starter and everything. It has one wire, main wire, coming out of the starter, and that just bolts right back on your solenoid the same way you took the other one off. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to hook up the battery cables, air cleaner, depending on what kind of air cleaner you have. If you have a uni like this, it's just a hose clamp. If you have the stock gearbox, it's a couple more bolts. So then you just put that back on, and pretty much just your cover. But what I'm going to do off camera is I'm going to go through this whole thing and make sure everything's snug down to spec and everything's right before I put everything together and start it. And after that, after I put on the air cleaner, tighten everything up, I'll put that air cleaner on and put this air cleaner on, and we'll fire it up and we'll see how it does.